Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast, broadcasting from GnosticWarrior.com in San Diego, California, to around the world. I'm your host, Mo, and today on the show we have author Richard Allen Spurgeon. Richard is a retired soldier and former consultant to the United States government and was in the Pentagon on the morning of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then also his book, The Game of Life Now, where he provides information and knowledge that has been intentionally kept from the public. So it's great to have him on the show today. So how you doing today, Richard? How's the weather there in Washington, D.C. treating you?
Hey, good day. It's really pretty. I think it's about 40 degrees here. Of course, they cannot predict the weather for more than one day. Now they can't predict it for a few hours with all this geoengineering that's going on. But today is pretty nice, and I think it's going to be nice for the rest of the week.
No, I agree. So you're not immune to that there in Washington, D.C.? They don't have no clear bubble over you there?
Not at all. you really can't I don't know if they can, how well they're able to control that. Now, I'm actually familiar with that quite a bit, but I've been with a few organizations that work with that kind of technology. But no, we actually had an earthquake here a couple of years ago. You didn't even hear about it on the news. There's never been one here in history, and we had an earthquake a couple of years ago, and of course the weather here, you can look at the clouds during the day and it's hazy, and any kid that, when we were younger, you look at the sky and you could predict the weather and you could see it, but now you look and you realize there's something shady going on. Even though the earth is really changing, we know the earth's changing too, but there's a whole lot of hanky-panky going on as well.
Yeah, I agree. The other day my wife and I were on the beach and it was sunset and it was just there, going off with the planes up top, and the sun was just reflecting and everybody was looking at it, and it was just this weird sunset we've never seen, and it started almost like smoking and getting hazy, and it felt like we were on Mars. And it was like no one else noticed it, and we were just like, wow, this is the trippiest thing we've ever seen, but yeah, it's amazing what's going on, and there's we could say what we want. It seems like we're screaming from rooftops, internet rooftops, but it's hard to do anything when planes are flying overhead, and it seems like they have the game sewn up. What are you doing right now? Or before we actually get into your work right now, Richard, in your book, The Game of Life Now, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, went to school, history, before we get into all that stuff?
Yeah, and appreciate the time. And basically, I grew up in America, down south, and I know everybody's got their unique story to tell, so I'll keep mine real short. And you grow up and you look out in the future there, and you're a little kid, and you're thinking, how could you become wealthy in life or travel the world and help people? And I think a lot of kids in their heart are good. Humans are like dogs. We can be taught to be good or bad. We can be programmed like sheeple, you hear people say. I grew up wanting to serve the world, so I signed up for the military before I even got out of high school. Didn't care to go to college at the time. And scored a little bit on that test, and they said, you can have anything you want. I took computer science. This was back in the early 80s. And, so when the service, computer science did really well, and the next thing you know, you get all these top secret security clearances, and you wind up in Washington, D.C., and they send you to school after school after school for many years, and computer science morphs into information technology, communication systems, and then that morphs into satellite and space systems, sensors, technology. So I stayed in that career field for over 20-something years, close to 25 years. But I had woke up many years before I got out of the field. But, when you're stuck in the system, you're wondering, how can I get out of there? I don't care to be part of this anymore, but yet everybody still wants to take that $200,000 a year as a contractor. So my background remained in information technology, communication systems, and of course I got into satellite and space systems, and worked for a lot of the covert ops companies that you're not allowed to really talk about, supporting the classified government. And when you leave the community, you have to sign off on all these disclosure statements. You'll never talk about it anymore in specifics, but you can talk about certain things. So that's where I'm at now.
Gotcha. And you were working in the Pentagon the morning of the 9/11 attacks, correct?
Yes, yes, yes. I had actually, I had been working in the Pentagon at that time 4 or 5 years, or at several occasions in the late 80s, and then again, I came back. And what happens is once you get these security clearances and you wind up in these nominative positions, you may work 3 or 4 years in one area and you get recruited by another. It could be the White House, or it could be the Secretary of Defense, or the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And there are many what we call nominative agencies in the area, and those that support the three-letter alphabet intelligence community as well. So, yes, I was in the Pentagon on 9/11. I was actually a senior military technician in my career field, and my career field was information systems, technology, and communication, and my title was actually information systems chief. I had declined consideration for the last promotion about 2 weeks before 9/11 actually took place. So I was kind of already on the brink of getting out of the service. I was tired of it, and I was kind of awake and realized that the public wasn't really being told the truth about everything. So it was time for me to go. So yes, I was in the building. Part of my additional duties were emergency evacuation, communication security, and I also was hand-selected to work the first shift in the National Military Command Center after the plane struck. So I worked 24 hours that day overnight, and then I was on the rotating shifts after that, serving in the capacity as a senior IT person.
Can you describe the time when the plane attacked, what building you were in and what building that the plane had hit?
Yeah, well, those that are listening out there probably aware that the day that the plane struck, the two towers were first. So you see that when you work over in the Chairman's Corner, the Secretary of Defense's quarters, supporting the National Military Command Center, they've always got the televisions on 24/7, CNN or any other news network. So we'd already saw the attacks take place. We'd already been notified we were setting up emergency command in the National Military Command Center, and then boom, our building gets hit. You don't see it. I was in the building. You feel it, though, and people jump up screaming what's going on, and out the door they go. And again, I didn't get to run out that fast because part of my additional duties for securing communication security equipment, classified material, things of that nature. But by the time I made it outside and helped set up command and control, then they tell you to grab your stuff and you're going to be on emergency shift. So I was there, and very few people died in the Pentagon, but even one is too many, because that portion of the building was pretty much empty that day, except for those that were moving back in. My son's mother actually worked in that portion of the building, and she was across the street in Crystal City at the time, but many of her coworkers didn't make it. They transitioned in the attack that day.
Yeah, do you feel this was some type of conspiracy? Have you investigated? I know a lot of people out there are familiar with 9/11. Okay.
I had access to data that you knew it was flaky, but you're so locked in that box with that security clearance and your ego and what you've always been told. It's harder to kind of snap out of it, but you knew some things were shady and there was information they were keeping from the public. But 9/11 was a straight false flag operation, and if you just watch a few documentaries, you do your own research, you can see it's obvious. Of course, they sprinkle a little garbage out there to keep everyone in chaos, but the bottom line is 9/11 was dirty.
Yeah, it's obvious something had happened, and I think these conspiracies were born into a conspiracy, from day one, and they've been going on ever since, man has attempted to rule over other men. It's amazing, and I know this show is not about 9/11 per se, but I like to talk about things, especially when you were there. So I found that was interesting, and we might as well touch on that. And let's go into the type of contracts. I know you have to sign secrecy agreements. You can't say certain things, and you can say what would be the consequence if you break this contract?
Yeah. Here's how they get them. You have people like Eric Snowden and others they'll work for a program, it may be just one small program, and they see something, and when they leave, that you sign a non-disclosure statement that says you'll never talk about anything you worked on, and you'll never mention any of the agencies you worked for, and you'll always refer to them as the United States government classified community. And what happens is people like Eric and others, they'll come out and then they'll give up a program name, which was classified, or they'll give up some details about what they were working on, and they really didn't have to even do any of that. because basically, if you tell people, Donald Rumsfeld said there were knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. I like to call them verifiables and non-verifiables. When you come out of the environment, you don't have to mention any of that stuff. You can just give people general information, and they can go look things up on their own and figure it out. So these guys, they come out, and then they talk about what they were working on, and then they've got the police and everybody else after them because they entered into an agreement where they said they wouldn't talk. So in regards for me, I was exposed to enough information to realize that the American government was not telling the public the truth. And that's all I needed to know. Because once you realize they're not telling you the truth about 2 or 3 things, you can figure out they're lying to you about everything else as well.
So essentially, are these contracts basically almost treason? Like you're going to commit treason against the government if you come out with these secrets? Okay.
That's how they try and spin it. That you weren't ever allowed to talk about any of these programs. And Eric Snowden comes out and gives you the exact program name he was working on and tells you what he was doing. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that they're all spying on you. And that when you look at, if you watch World Wrestling, you see Hulk Hogan and The Rock, they're all fighting with one another behind the scenes. They're paid by the same guy. When you're awake, you realize that the Democrats and Republicans are fighting with one another, but they're paid by the same people behind the scenes. Then when you wake up further, you realize that Russia, China, America, North Korea, we all appear to be at war, but that's just being orchestrated to make people think we're all fighting with one another. That's not really what's taking place at all. And you got Microsoft, Google, Apple, and all these other companies that are assisting China, Russia, America, and we're all at war with one another. And these agencies are spying on everybody, not just American citizens. They spy on anybody who speaks up and tries to wake people up. And they label you a domestic terrorist, and the next thing you know, they're spying on your phone, your computer, and I'm already going through that now. And it's kind of hilarious, actually. But you're kind of glad that people are listening in on you because those that listen in are kind of waking up themselves as well.
Yeah, I think that it's easy to monitor us now. Like, the military created the World Wide Web. We're, on an internet program, podcast that's broadcasted across the world and downloaded and so forth. And, I'm just a small show, and there's a lot of big shows that talk about this type of stuff all day long that have millions of listeners. So, when I see that, it seems like it's open game to listen, but you also have got to be careful what you can and cannot say. I've came across things that I know I could pursue, but I didn't think it was wise for myself or my family to pursue that. And I feel I could have, uncovered some, crazy things, but it wasn't wise, and it's not my job, and I just want to provide this podcast for people, such as yourself. And I know your book is not just about conspiracies and so forth, and I love actually the stuff that you do talk about, and I know the audience is going to love it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, The Game of Life Now, and how you're trying to provide people with knowledge that has been intentionally kept from the public?
Yes, I sure can. So my background, computer science, information technology, and you start working with a lot of organizations dealing with the most technologically advanced systems in the world. And when you start talking about satellite systems and satellite sensor systems, and you realize this is real funny. Your body's made of atoms flashing in and out of existence, and atoms are made of these infinitely smaller parts, subatomic particles that everyone argues about, named muon, Higgs boson particle, and God particle. So you realize each star emits light in its own frequency and phase, and if you do not see light in that frequency or phase, then you would not see anything that exists within that solar system. It's oblivious to you. And you realize that you're made of atoms flashing in and out of existence and never touched, then who are you? And everyone's had deja vu and chance encounters and dreams that come true and serendipity and synchronicity, or been thinking about someone and they call them on the phone. And science tells you, don't pay attention to that. It's just chance and circumstance or coincidence. But the word coincidence is mathematical. Coincide, it means two events that fit perfectly together. To the unaware person, it looks like an accident. To the person who's awake, it was by design. So for me, you're sitting in there and you're realizing that if this technology or this knowledge was made available to kids at a young age, most kids are born, the moment you're born, you're slapped, you're stuck with about 20 needles, and by the time you're 5, you've had 30 or 40 shots. And at 5, you're told where to be when the bell rings, regurgitate what you told, or we're going to put you on Ritalin. But if kids are always taught they're going to die. So everyone lives in fear of death. But once you realize we never die, there's no such thing as a dead atom. Even, the phone in your hand or the desk you're sitting at is alive. Your eyes just can't perceive it. So, that gets you thinking. Go ahead.
No, and we're made of course, chemicals as well. What's your study into immortality? What is left of us when we die? What's your thoughts on that, Richard?
I've contemplated that, and Lord knows I've meditated for years at a time, and I've had the out-of-body experiences and the near-death experiences and all the other lucid dreams and everything. The bottom line is you hear people talk about dark energy and dark matter, and that there was a time when people said no such thing as black holes existed, but we realized that black holes exist within every atom, and that black hole is this moment that light goes over the event horizon. It disappears. Where does it go? And you hear people say the void, infinite mind, source energy. And then all of a sudden, pow, like your plasma television flashing 600 times a second. Most people don't ever think of that or see it, but your body's flashing in and out of existence billions of times a second, and the body is just a vehicle that the soul, conscious awareness, uses to experience a universe of relativity. Up, down, north, south, them, us, yin, yang, good, bad, death, alive. Because there is no such thing as death. Death is just an illusion, because when you think about death, that's on the physical plane. But the physical plane rides on a spiritual plane that is infinite.
And that's the big secret that's being kept from most of us that aren't aware.
I think once you realize who you are on the inside and you can learn to still your mind, you hear people talk about be still and know that I'm God, or still waters run deep. And Socrates and all of them said, know thyself, even though he didn't speak English, right? It's funny how everyone quotes everybody, but the person that quote never spoke that language in the first place. The big secret is knowing who you are on the inside. And once you can figure that part out, then you start seeing all the other little secrets that are being kept from you, like if money's made of paper or digits on a computer, then why do a few families own the world banks and you're not allowed to know who they are? Why do we have economic problems that rob every one of their pensions, right?
Yeah, well, that goes to the conspiracy that we're born into, and a lot of people think, we're in the United States and we're free, and I think that's a joke. I know because I'm not how much taxes I have to pay, and if I don't pay those taxes, that someone comes to my door with a gun, and if that doesn't work after a while, I eventually get thrown in a cage. So, you have all these different things that you have to do, and of course, we have the rule of law managing us, and I do believe in some things as far as government oversight right now, because of the society we live in and how people are so mind controlled and asleep, that if there was no government, it would just be chaos, because people wouldn't be able to come together in community. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Richard?
At this point of evolution, humans need government, and I realize people say govern, the concept comes from Latin or whatever. It means to control, to regulate, and that government is intended to ensure that all humans receive fair and equitable treatment. But in reality, you're being lied to. It's called, I hear people call it NLP, neuro-linguistic programming of the mind. And if I mispronounce any of these words, please don't hold it against me. Everyone's got their own way of saying Socrates or Socrates. But
sure.
Back to that programming of the mind. You're told you live in the United States, but you really live in the divided states. You've got 50 states divided by 2,000 counties divided by 10,000 towns. And they all have the county laws, city laws, state laws, federal laws, and all these federal agency laws. There's millions of laws, and they tell you ignorance of the law is no excuse. Then they tell you live in the land of the free, but really we're 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population. And the prisons are a privatized system, just like the military-industrial complex, the law enforcement, criminal, put quotes around that, criminal justice system, because it is criminal, is used to create a never-ending system where we're at war with one another. So, see, land of the free, you're not. You're free range at best. And you think you own your home, clothes, and car, but if you don't pay taxes this year, they'll take everything you own and put you in jail. So you really don't own diddly squat. And even if you pay cash for your house and your clothes and your car, if you don't pay property tax at the end of the year, they'll take your stuff again and put you in jail unless you defend yourself. And you've got a lot of people beating the government in court now because the government has to prove they have a contract with you. You can't just take a person's rights and their life. That's slavery. But most people just acquiesce to it, and they never think about going in to defend themselves. But you got a lot of... Dean Clifford, I think, is amazing out of Canada. I don't know if you've heard of him yet. But he's killing them up there.
Yeah, no, I've heard of him. I've seen a lot of, videos and different things that have happened, but they don't seem... they seem like they're half wins, where they go out of the courtroom when it's a recess, and I look at that stuff, as like they basically have one bailiff and the judge, and they have 6 guys in the room with whoever is facing the judge or the defendant in the courtroom, and they're recording it usually. And I sometimes I think they're planning the arrest and how they're going to get more bailiffs in the room, and then these guys take off real quick. That's how I've seen it a lot. And then the last time there was a gentleman a couple weeks ago that got arrested, and I've been in court several times, and I've never, of course, tried this, and I've been in jail. I've actually also been to prison at one time for the sales of marijuana, but that's another story in itself. So I'm familiar kind of with the court system and how it works, but I think it's rather comical to try to not pay your taxes. I mean, they come to my door. I had a business. I owe some back taxes that I'm currently arranging, and these guys don't mess around. And these guys basically are fighting a simple ticket, or they might owe a couple $100 or they just refuse to pay their taxes. But when you have a job and you have a business, or you have a bank account and you actually have to do things because you have children and you have to make money, and you can't live in the middle of nowhere in the sticks off of barley you find off the road, you got to participate in the system and try not paying taxes when you get a check from Google. It just doesn't happen. And if you don't pay those taxes, they come to your door. And if you don't pay that, then you're going to jail. It's plain and simple. So, hats off to them, but I'd like to see proof of like guys like myself not paying taxes and not going to jail, because we go to jail left and right. So, anyways, that's my rant. Sorry.
Unless you can articulately defend yourself. Have you ever heard someone say you beat them before you get to court? So the correspondence takes place before you go to court. You document everything that's been said and the questions that you asked, and you prove that when you get to court that you've tried to work with them and you've asked them every question possible, but they refuse to answer your question. So there's this moment where you get past fear. About marijuana and police officers. Policy. How do you spell the word policy? Police. But we spell it with a Y. Policy officers. They enforce policies, and they arrest people for laws, policies that have been made up that are not only are they unconstitutional, they violate your natural organic human rights. This whole thing with marijuana is really funny. That George Washington grew hundreds of acres of marijuana and hemp. It was the primary crop in America for hundreds of years. He was the number one alcohol distributor when he died in 1799. He had hundreds of slaves, and we know that the Washington family got that land from killing the Indians, and that George's ancestors were responsible personally for killing all those Indian chiefs. They summoned them together, tricked them, and killed them. So now you put 1 million kids a year in jail for smoking a joint or growing a little marijuana, and we already know that hemp is the world's most nutritious plant for humans and animals alike. It's an amazing plant. Just the list goes on and on and on. But they dumbify Americans and tell them it's bad for them. If you've ever watched the documentary Reefer Madness from the 30s, you realize how stupid humans were. And even today, they're telling you Gatorade's good for you, and Gatorade's poison. Coca-Cola's poison. It's not that alcohol's bad for you. It's all the chemicals they dump in the alcohol when they go through the fermentation and preservation phases. And a lot of the countries outlaw them dumping chemicals in alcohol, like Germans have stricter laws. And I'm rambling on here. So how do we get past the legal systems because we're all being used against one another. And it takes a very brave soul to go up in the courtroom and deny the court's jurisdiction. Remember in the Matrix where he said, "Don't give me that jurisdiction shit." And the court claims jurisdiction over you just like a slave owner claims jurisdiction over the slaves he owns. But who gave the government the right to take your life? No one. And the moment you question that, are you willing to go before a jury and try and wake them up?
Yeah.
12 would go ahead.
Well, that's what I'd like to see. I believe it is brave that some of these guys do what they're doing, and I don't mean to knock any of them, that are in this freedom and patriot and, challenging these legal standings. But again, all the videos I've seen, they kind of storm out, during a recess when, if you're really super, super brave, I guess you would say it, I don't know, you would sit there and wait and see what they're going to do and challenge it. But that last guy got arrested, and I've challenged them on my arrests, and I've got a resisting arrest. And so again, I believe that it's no different than when the kings ruled over their subjects. And like you'd said, they have this illusion that we're free, but we're not. So why would these guys be free? Because they're going to challenge the system. It's just an illusion, So again, hats off to them, and let's do what we can do. What I believe is, that, like you talk about in your book, the atoms and what we're made of, and that we need to go with inside. I write about Gnosticism sometimes on my blog, and some people care about that stuff because I believe Gnosis comes from within, and that if we're ever going to do something out there, it has to be done like people such as yourself, Richard. You were on the inside, and you decided, after you worked for the government for a while, you decided to come out with your own book. That's not just about conspiracies, but it's the game of life. You call it the game of life now. And, that's what people need to do is we need to dig it deep inside ourselves and come out with our own creations, our own websites, our own different kinds of things, and come together. And we were talking about that before we started the show here, Richard, and you talked about starting a website where people come together and, start some type of movement. And, I think that should happen. And we'll do another show on that on another time. What's your thoughts on intuition, and how can we tap that intuition that people have?
Right. Yeah, I've heard people call it the sixth sense. Okay. Real quick, I'm going to answer that question. I want to throw one more thing in there. When we talked about the free range free, the Social Security number. You were told you were given this number to help you. Everything's always given to you to help you, the vaccines and everything. And then what they do is stick things in the vaccine they don't tell you about, and you find out years later. Social Security numbers. Everyone has a number assigned to them. They think they're free range, but you really got a number that keeps track of what you make, where you spend it, and where you travel. You don't leave the country without that Social Security number. It's on your that's how to keep track of your passport. But to realize there are families that live on this planet that don't have a number assigned to them, and they travel from every country they want with complete diplomatic immunity. They travel in private jet, private boat. They own private islands. They own enclaves throughout the world that are exempt from all government control. So I think most people can't believe that's true. But how do you know all these things? Well, all right, knowing comes from within. The only way to know something new is to go from the known to the unknown. In order to develop this sixth sense, this ability to sense and perceive things that are beyond the average person's capability until they clear their view, how do we tap into it? That's what you're asking me in short. How do you tap into the sixth sense?
Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's real easy. You heard me earlier say about being still, and there's a quote, and a lot of these books you read, the Bible, the Quran, and any of these other great works, these were stories that were told to humans to help clue them in to the divinity within all things, because if you don't see God in everything, you'll never see her in anything. Most of these people had learned to give up their ego, what they thought about themselves. I've heard people say ego edging God out. and they give up the material world, and they're able to meditate, and they're able to clear their mind, and then when they open, they're able to see the world with a clear view. And I just want to use this as an example. Have you ever heard of stereoscopic or stereogram artwork?
I
Most
believe
people
so,
never
yeah.
heard of the name, but you know what it is. Have you ever been to Spencer's Gifts or all these little novelty shops around the world? They'll have a big, beautiful picture. It looks like abstract art. And the more you look at it, if you can cross your eyes and bring your vision together, you can see an image in the picture. And when you see it, it jumps out at you in three-dimensional form. Have you ever seen one of those before?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So it's like a hidden picture within a picture.
Right, and the picture, the original picture, the big picture is chaotic. It's just all this, just chaotic as all get out. It's like looking at the earth. But the more you can focus your view properly, all of a sudden, you'll see a picture jump out at you. And not only do you see the picture, it jumps out at you in three-dimensional format so that when you see it, you're like, whoa, now I see it. Most people sit around and look at those pictures for hours. You have a whole group of people and no one can see the picture inside the picture until one person gets it and explains to the others how they might be able to see something new too if they can change their point of view, their perception. And when other people start seeing it, they're all like, oh my God, I couldn't see it before. Oh, now I can see it. Well, this is what we're going through now. You got 95, 97% of the world are still looking at the world based upon what they've been told to believe. And then you've got this 1%, 2%, 3% that you and I are in that are wide awake. And we can see there's a shark in the swimming pool. I don't care what you tell me, there's a shark in the swimming pool. I can see it for myself. I don't need you to tell me. And, then you start questioning. Once you start waking up at that level, you can see the world for what she truly is. She's a paradise. Earth is alive. I don't know if you know that. And it's a predator planet by design.
Oh, so true. Yeah, definitely. Your book, do you go over a lot of the stuff? I didn't get a chance. I know we just, okay. Can you tell
about the predator planet we live on? And then once you really wake up, you realize that humans are a very special creature. Of course, all the creatures on the planet are special, and they're all made from the same invisible force. You hear people say, not a sparrow falls in all of heaven, God doesn't know about, God's the sparrow. And I know those are Christian quotes, but those quotes have also been said in many different ways in many other books. You realize that humans come here as a game. We live forever. Once the body dies, the soul uses the body like a car. You have many cars in your lifetime, and the soul uses many bodies in the course of its existence, and the soul's multidimensional to experience this universe.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I actually have a friend of mine, Michael Jaco. He's ex-Navy SEAL, and he had explained that. And we didn't get a chance to go over it too deeply, but he had explained that many of us are in multiple incarnations right here, right now, meaning that, me, Mo, I have another experience, or I'm having multiple experiences around the world right now, and have had them multiple times in my life. I think that's what he had said. If I'm misquoting you, if you ever hear me, Michael Jacob, please forgive me. But in any event, it's real interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, awareness. We were talking about earlier, the person who's aware. You can talk to a person that thinks he's smart and he can tell you how fast an electron travels or how much a proton weighs, but the moment you talk to him about, hey, we can run a car on water while we still use gas, he looks at you kind of dumbfounded, and you say, what about all the herbicides, fungicides, and pesticides you're putting in your food? And this rocket scientist is all dumbfounded over there, and you talk to him about money being made of paper that it's on a computer. They look at you dumbfounded. So there's a difference between what we think of as intelligence, which is answering trivia pursuit questions, and what we think of as awareness. Conscious awareness means you're aware of what you're thinking, why you think it, and what's going on around you and within you, which is most important. Because the outside world is a holographic illusion. We're able to prove that now, and we've been able to prove it for decades technologically, but you can't talk to people about it because they label you as a nut job, or they're locked in their religion. And Lord, dare you talk about something that goes beyond their religion, but they've allowed a religion to come between themselves and God, which is within yourself. And as long as you're looking for a God out in outer space or some blonde-headed, blue-eyed named Jesus, guy named Jesus to come save you, then you'll never realize that there's something within you waiting for you to discover it. The moment you can become aware and you can kind of get still, you can see the world with a much clearer view, and then you start to see for yourself that you and I and everyone else that's listening to us now, we're all fragments of one another. We're all part of one living creation. The only thing that causes us to judge one another is because we believe we're separate. But you've been told your whole life, what you do to one, you do to all. What you think about another, you think about yourself. Those are just simple concepts to clue you in on this magical life that you're living.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that, Richard, that we're all interconnected. But I also have an alternative belief, meaning that we all are playing our own tune, that we're all here with a special, whether that be a gift or a special role or a tune to play, and we all can't play the same tune, or we're all the same bass drum on the drums. We all gotta kind of hit our tune. And I think, once we go within and we do the things that you're saying, that we can do that and work together in tandem as like an interconnected band. What are your thoughts on my theory?
I think you're right on the money, and both of those theories go together. If you've got a big, beautiful picture, it can be comprised of trillions of pixels, a pixel. Well, you're a pixel in this beautiful picture, like a drop of water in the ocean. We might like to think we're separate, but we're still part of the ocean, and we're still part of this mosaic of life. It's only our limited perception that keeps us locked in that tunnel vision of the pixel. But once we're able to expand our awareness, we're able to see, you call them epiphanies, you get glimpses of greater and greater knowledge that's waiting for you, it's always been waiting for us. When they say, it took us millions of years to learn how to do fire and float a boat. And well, we could have done this a billion years ago. What took us so long to do it? And what next great discovery is just a thought away, waiting for us to open our mind?
Can I tell you a quick theory? I want to kind of let's expand our minds, Richard. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. My theory is it kind of correlates with the race theory, that possibly there is several races or alien species competing for this planet. And if you look at, I know we have different languages. You had mentioned Socrates earlier and how I think it was Greek, right? So everything he had said was in Greek. So we have these different races, and they actually call us races. It seems like, are we in some kind of race to the end? When's the end? Where's the finish line? Who won? But I see that possibly has kept us from doing that, and maybe the connections that we have might be with other planets, possibly in these races that are on Earth now. If we're billions of years old. So if I'm from planet Jupiter, and this other race over here that's completely different, and we know that, based on DNA testing and so forth, and they have a different everything is connected to, say, Saturn, we might kind of conflict with each other, and we came here when, and, that's kind of a theory I've had for a little while, and we've always kind of worshiped the planets and those planets in particular. So it's that's one of the things I've looked into as far as astrotheology and the Bible and connecting that type of stuff. And I know it's a little bit different than what you're talking about now, but it all kind of correlates together, because that's some of the kind of the controls that the powers that be to use to bind us together. And again, the word religion means to bind together. So what do you feel about that, as far as possibly we've come from different planets and there's different races, aliens, that have been competing and mating with one another, of course?
Yes, and it's true. We have hundreds of pyramids on the planet, and they tell you cavemen built them 15, 12,000 years ago, and they're all over the planet, by the way. And they were built by cavemen before the rope, the wheel, or the pulley were invented. And that's just a crock of crap. Yeah. The underwater cities, the thousands of crop circles, the thousands, they call them UFO. You keep people oblivious, unidentified. But if you call it ETCs, extraterrestrial craft, which is what most people in the know call, then you get, most people can't get past what they believe. The moment we get past what we believe, we realize that there many different advanced ancients that exist out in this universe, and this universe is just one universe of an infinite number of other universes we call the cosmos, and you hear people talk about parallel worlds, and you tap into these things when you have dreams, moments of reflection where you're sitting there quietly contemplating life and thinking, and you realize there's something magical going on. Humans were created on the planet. They want you to believe two chimps had sex, out popped a black baby, and this little kid turned yellow, red, and white wherever he traveled. Lord knows who they slept with and who took care of them. And you realize that advanced ancients came here and created humans, and we were created. We all have, how do you say, you hear people say the primordial atom, is that what I think I hear people refer to it as, is that at some level we're all connected, and even though we're made of blood and guts, at a level lower than that, you're talking about alchemy, and below that you're talking about electromagnetic energy that makes up atoms and molecules. And then we're all flashing in and out of existence, that there's a spiritual realm, but yet this physical realm has a history tied to its time-space continuum that's magnificent, and it goes back billions and billions of years. And people say, well, if extraterrestrials or advanced ancients or whatever name you give them, interdimensionalists, if they exist, where are they at? Why won't they show themselves to us? I think that's one question you hear a lot of people asking. It's kind of funny, but you think of it like this. We're a primitive species, and just as we watch ants or gorillas at play, when you look at Earth from space, it's like looking in a fishbowl, and humans are just down here fighting with one another, killing each other, talking about Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha and Confucius and Lao Tzu, and everybody's killing each other because of the way they pronounce those words. But yet, if you help a butterfly out of its cocoon, it'll never fly. If you help a bird out of its egg, it'll never fly. And we realize that you can't grow plants in outer space because they need wind, gravity, and rain. And if the human body and brain aren't challenged, they wither and die. And you realize that people say, why wouldn't they show themselves and come down here and save us from all of this? Well, you got to save yourself. If you're waiting for someone else to show up and save you or enlighten you, then when are you ever going to learn anything on your own? And when you play a video game, you have to play it on your own, unless you use cheat codes, which is a good thing. But if you got someone else playing your character, then when do you ever play the game and learn for yourself? And you don't get to the next level until you master the level you're on, which comes from awareness, conscious awareness.
And which leads to evolution, I believe, of your soul and why we're here.
Cosmic consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful, Richard. I love the way you put it. And that's what I believe the audience, if you're out there, I know sometimes I'm guilty. I was guilty of it, of not working on myself and kind of standing on the sidelines. And you're gathering knowledge, you're researching, and you're doing a lot of work, and it's kind of sometimes spinning your wheels. And that's what I want to do, is motivate people out there. I put articles on my blog, and I'm talking about I'm fasting, and I'm doing things to clean the toxins out of me. And people are kind of they don't get shared as much as some of my podcast and sometimes my conspiracy type or history articles, my weird history articles. And, it's important that we work on ourselves. And I believe once you start working on yourself, and I believe it's a never ending process until we die, but you also have to accept yourself and love yourself. And then we work on our families, and it slowly works out from there, like what you're doing by creating things. And putting your book out there and sharing your knowledge and connecting and reaching out to me. And I'm really thankful that you did, because, I talked to you a little bit yesterday, and you said some great words to me. I'm going through a little tough time right now. My father had just passed away, and you were one of the only people I had actually talked to yesterday. And the few words you said to me, brother, were so helpful. And like you had said, there's
he's not dead.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
You get rid of that word and start using the word transition. He transitioned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he transitioned. So it's bringing tears. It's bringing a little tears to my eyes now, because it did then, because it helped me, and it helps me understand, because I do believe in that, and just the way you had said it, so simple and eloquently, is great. And I believe a lot of people need that out there now, Richard. And people put so much goobly gop on it and spiritual stuff. I know some of that stuff is needed, but it's not all needed, and it's really simple. So
and you can figure it all out on your own. And anybody that knows the truth will tell you, don't listen to them, think for yourself. And they'll just kind of give you clues or show you things so that you can see it for yourself. Because the moment you get it, then I know you got it on the inside, and no one can take that from you. They may try and tell you, oh, I don't believe that, but you say, no, I already know. I don't need you to try and sell me that Quran or the Bible. I already know those books have been altered. The stories have been perverted to keep people from finding the truth, which is within themselves. You know, yesterday you told me about that, and I appreciate you sharing that with me about your dad. You know that he's right here, right now. There's an invisible veil that prevents his consciousness or that physical body from being seen by your eyes. But who your father is on the inside, you're one. You and him are one. Everything you ever become, your father wanted to be, and everything your father ever was, you admire, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And even if you grow up taller than your father, you'll always look up to him.
No, I agree.
Right. So I do discuss this a lot in the book, actually, about the life and what happens, and when you realize that maybe it doesn't dead end like you've always been told. And if you were to realize you never died, guess what would happen? You'd stop living in fear. And the moment you stop living in fear, you become a brave soul. And when you're brave, you can do a lot of things. You're not scared of going to jail no more. You're not scared of someone trying to tell you that you're crazy, because you're able to explain in the simplest of concepts things that other people can understand. So my father, I went through the same thing you went through 10 years ago. Uncle, terminal transitions, and my father's terminal with the same illness my uncle had. They're on a transplant list. They can't get a transplant. But you look around and see all the wealthy getting transplants every day. And you start asking questions about the medical system. If we know the placebo effect is real, we know how to cure cancer, why aren't we curing it? Why do the Rockefellers own the cancer foundation? And all these little questions, you wake up. Most people, though, they start asking big questions and they can't figure them out. If you ask the simple questions first, they'll lead you to the big questions and the big answers.
Yeah, and I think it's important that, you know, when we're seeking the truth and asking those questions and seeking answers to our questions, that we don't endlessly spin our wheels on things that we can't do anything about. And that, again, comes back to working on ourselves and doing the best we can in this world. What do you recommend that people do out there to reach their inner selves? You know, I know that, of course, there's meditating, which we had mentioned. What are some things and tools people could use, Richard, that you would recommend?
I'll share some funny ones with you. And I love where you're going with that. The first thing you do, people say, well, what do I do? I mean, I'm here, and the world's going to get aliens and the government and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the families with no names above the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, because the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Bill Gates and those guys, they're the high end of the low end. Above them are families you don't know exist. You don't know their names. You don't know what's going on. So all of it can be overwhelming. And you're like, so first thing you do, take care of yourself. Number one. People say, oh, that's very selfish. Well, let me expand. If you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to help anybody else? You can't do anything if you can't take care of yourself. So the body is a temple. And once you realize the body is the world's most advanced electromagnetic creation on this planet, and it's like a car. If you put junk in the motor, it's going to tear the car up. You put junk in your body, the body starts withering and dying. They don't want to kill you too quick, because if I kill you too quick, you're going to catch on. So what I want to do is poison you for 30 or 40 years, your water, your food, your school teachings, your government, your media. So I'm poisoning you body, mind, and soul, and you usually wind up dying 60, 70 years old, which is what I think might be the average rate nowadays. And not counting the millions that starve to death worldwide. So you start taking care of yourself first, and that means body, mind, and soul. You start, why do you think the way you think, and what do you think? And once you become the silent observer, and you hear a lot of people say, well, I don't want to think about what I'm thinking about all day long. That's too tiring. Well, there you go. Then you don't want to know anything new. But the person wants to know why they think the way they think, and they're conscious of what they think. Most people think all day long, I wish I made more money, my lover's not screwing me good enough, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and they got all these thoughts, coulda, shoulda, woulda, and they never even realize what they're thinking about all day long. And the moment you do, you become the silent observer, and then you start clearing out all that clutter and chatter in the mind, because you realize the mind's like a cup. A full cup holds nothing. An empty cup holds everything, right? So if your cup is full, you're not going to know anything. So one, you're taking care of yourself, body, mind, and soul. You're eating good. You start getting all the hygiene items, throw them out. You go to the salt rock, purifying your water, eating good, clean food as much as possible, because you got to realize they're lying to you about the organic food laws as well. Then number two, you start waking up everybody around you, friends, family, people that'll listen. But you realize you can't run up and down the highways and the byways trying to flag people down, because you'll be spending all your energy trying to help everybody else that doesn't want to be helped. You can only help those that want to be helped. And then number three, you start the system, you start pulling out of that. You don't support that system no more. You don't buy into it. You stop shopping at McDonald's, Gatorade, this, that. I know I'm rambling on, but 1, 2, 3, take care of yourself, start waking up those around you. Number 3, start pulling back from the system.
No, Richard, that's what people need. They need simple tools, and that's what I believe, being a Gnostic warrior, that's the title of my blog, gnosticwarrior.com, is that people be a knowledge, Gnostic is basically knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and be a warrior, because there is a war against you and your body, your soul, your spirit, everything. And now you're telling me organic. We spend a ton of money on organic food. Richard, please educate me on that one now. What's up with the organics?
All right. You go out, coffee, know right up front that coffee, alcohol, and spices, pepper, they're the most heavily pesticided products in the world. Herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. And then people are just hooked on alcohol, Budweiser, and coffee, Folgers coffee, and Coca-Cola and Gatorade. So you want to start eating clean. You hear people say, like, you're poor. And I hear some other people talk about the paleo diet, which is the caveman diet. But let's keep it simple. Eat what the earth gives you. Eat from the colors of the rainbow. Apples, fruits, squashes, greens, all the different colors. And the thing about the organic laws, they don't police, policy, P-L-I-C-E. They don't policy the water. They may keep you from putting herbicides or fungicides on the food, but the water can be the most contaminated ingredient of the lot. And then here you're using that to soak the crops. So these are little things that countries like China and others get around because there's no laws to govern the water they're using for the crops. And some of them are even allowed to use chemicals on the crops up to 90 days before harvest. So you realize there's so many loopholes in the organic laws that it's hard for you to know whether you're getting a good, clean bite of food or something to drink. But you just do your best. Do your best, and it'll get better.
Yeah, so you're not saying don't eat organic, but it's just nothing's guaranteed. It's just it's getting so ridiculous. I do the best to protect myself and my children, and doing that, it actually gets more expensive. And then you hear things like this. And of course, I've researched and done some of my own where I've heard that. And it's terrible that, we just can't even get any clean food anymore.
Or clean water. And we know how to create clean water. We've known how to run a car on water for decades. And when people say, oh, no, we don't know how to do that, and you look at them and say, well, how do you think we keep a submarine underwater for months at a time? We've done this for decades. And they say, well, what do you mean? And you say, well, how do you think they get their oxygen or drinking water from when they're underseas? They bring in seawater, they filter it, and then they get drinks, gives them drinking, bathing water, and then they run electricity through the water, electrolysis, which splits the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen for the ship, hydrogen is a byproduct. And again, do the best you can with eating clean. The body's a temple. When you bathe, you want to bathe in good, clean water, not water loaded with so many chemicals you can hardly believe it. So the food and the water, what you put on the body and put in the body, lead directly to your health and happiness. If you poison yourself over time, as positive as you'd like to think you are, you're still going to have challenges.
Yeah, and then, I always have that theory. I'm buying all this organic food. I'm working out, and as I'm looking up, I'm seeing all the planes shooting over, shoo, shoo, with all the trails, and you do the research on the trails, and there's supposed to be all these chemicals in it, and it's just like you end up like throwing your hands in the air sometimes, Richard.
Frustrated because we're up against so much right now, and my mother keeps saying, take one day at a time, one day at a time. Keep waking. You unite mothers. Once enough mothers realize that they're lying to their kids at school, They're feeding them the cheapest food they can at school. And many countries now are outlawing GMO, conventional food, especially in the school systems like France. And they're making this, and you're forcing public awareness. And it just tickles me how many school teachers and mothers believe what the government tells them instead of, oh, your child was born with autism because it's hereditary and you've never had it happen before in your family. And they say, well, it's part of your genes. Okay, all possibilities are part of my genes. But, so we're waking people up. You have a wife or a friend girl, a significant other?
Yeah, no, I have
a boyfriend. I didn't.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know these days you got to be a little bit careful how you ask those questions. You never know. But yeah, I'm married. No, I'm married, happily married, have a wife, and this is actually my second marriage. But we've been married for 5 years, been together 8 years now. We have 2 children together, and I have 5 total children.
Beautiful. And the thing about a marriage. First of all, I have a chapter in the book on relationships, and regardless of who you date, male, female, same sex, whether you're bisexual or trisexual, it doesn't matter. Those are just judgments humans make about one another. And once you realize that there's no such thing as good or bad, that those are relative terms, and that, say in this universe, it's a predator planet by design. You look at a great white shark, he eats a seal, and everybody screams, oh my God, it's horrible, or the deer. Well, the seal was a predator. So one predator eats another predator, and oh be it. But the bear eats the deer. And they said, well, the deer wasn't doing anything but eating fruits and vegetables. And they said, okay, well, the deer died, and the deer was a good person, right, or a good soul. But what if you don't die, that you're playing in a game, and you get killed and you live forever? And then what if you are part of the birds and the bees and the trees, and we're all one, and that you could glimpse it on moments where you could free your mind, and you could escape the material, the corporeal, the physical plane, and you could, glimpse that you're part of this earth.
Richard, can I play devil's advocate real quick?
Yes.
Real quick, and I just always had this question, and I don't know if you could answer this. No one has been able to answer it yet. I understand all that, but why, for example, even in the bear family, why isn't the grizzly screwing the little brown bear, or the brown bear screwing the grizzly, or if we get into the sharks, the great white shark, screwing the bull, or the bull with the hammerhead? We don't have any of that, but in the human family, it's just fair game. I want to understand all.
Oh, yeah, about the predatory cycle.
Not the predatory, but the sexual cycle of, you could be gay, you could be whatever. I understand the sex part of it, but they're not mating with outside of their species or their kind, and they're not, they're not doing pedophilia or anything like that. So again, I'm just saying that I have nothing against people who might decide to do that, as long as you don't harm other people or children against their will. Right. But again, I want to explore that question, Richard, with you.
Okay. All right, let's real quick. Humans, I was telling you earlier, we're the special ones. You're not going to turn a great white shark into a vegetarian or a bear. They're going to see who they are. They work on instinct. All animals work on instinct. All insects, animals, this, that, whatever category you classify that living, animated creation as. Humans are different. We get to make a choice. You can prey on other people, or you can help other people. We call them predators and creators. The funny thing about humans is we are animals too, animals by nature, divine by God. We're growing outwardly into the gods we are within. We're still animals. We live on the planet. We have animal characteristics, flight or fight, survival instincts, and then we also have these instincts to want to procreate and reproduce. However, there are some humans that are kind of beyond that desire to procreate or reproduce, and to them, life is about relationships where they interact with other people. Sex is an energy that we can use. It's spiritual, and it's also therapeutical on the physical plane. It allows us to tap into greater levels of conscious and awareness. And when two people who come together love one another, you hear people say, when two people come together, I am there. When two or more people come together in harmony, God's there. And the way that works in math is that two forces come together in harmony, they'll multiply exponentially, but if they're not in harmony, they'll cancel each other out. So humans have been given a choice. We can either prey on other people in this existence, or we can help other people. It's a choice we get to make. We can eat meat, or we can take from what the earth gives to us. And there's some things a carnivore will never understand. And I've been a carnivore. From the moment most people are born, you're taught to eat meat, or after you're old enough to chew meat, I should say. And but you wake up one day and say, I don't need to eat meat in order to survive, and I don't care to kill another animal in order for me to live. Most kids go to McDonald's and throw half the burger in the trash, and they never realize an animal died so that they could throw that burger in the trash. So they've been desensitized to killing because they don't have to kill in order to survive. But humans, by nature, we're vegetarian. And I know people will argue with you that all day long, oh, we're carnivores, we're meant to eat meat. And I'm like, okay, I'm 40 pounds of muscle, and I don't eat any meat, and you're telling me I'm going to starve to death if I don't, and I haven't eaten meat in a long time. So,
do you think, Richard, that we just been trained because of this war cycle that we're in, that the powers that be have trained us to eat meat and condition us so we are a predator class?
We're growing out of it. Humans, if you look at our evolution on the planet, we too did anything we could to survive. And that meant killing animals. But you can't shun, most people that become a vegetarian, then they shun everybody that eats meat after that. Well, you can't do that, because if our ancestors hadn't ate meat and used those leather carcasses for pelts and clothes and shoes and slippers, everything, none of us be here. And that humans are evolving from being animals to the gods we truly are. And all animals are gods. Everything has a bit of the divine within it. Everything's made from one divine energy.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, though, is that we're appear to be a hybrid type of earth creature now. Again, I don't know who created us, or we're just kind of the end result, and we're all here trying to figure it all out. But that, we have, for example, the, European, which would be the, Western European type person, which would be the Americans for the most part, Anglo-Saxon or whatever, would be have a lot of Neanderthal in them. Not a lot, but 4%, as opposed to, for example, I think Asians might have 1%, but they do have a little percentage in them. So it's just interesting, these different characteristics, and, we're usually a little bit bigger than them over there as far as our size and our stature. But of course, we eat a lot more meat and beef and stuff like that. But it's just interesting, the hybrid nature of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you look at the Samoan people, and they're very large and muscular. Yeah. And a lot of it can be, like you said, eating habit, and then others can be and very kind people too. If you lived in the Far East or some of the islands, you'll find there's some of the most kindest, politest people in the world. And I've always appreciated that traveling overseas. And of course, Americans can be some of the most vicious animal-like. And in other parts of the world as well I've been to, people can be very vicious. Well, we were all created from the same source. And first of all, even when you talk about the extraterrestrials and advanced ancients and any of these other things, well, if they're all flashing in and out of existence too, then who are they? That's when you can get to the top questions, then you can figure out all of the questions below it. That we're all part of one another, and we're all playing in this endless sea of games, where you get to experience life from many, many different perspectives. And most people say, "Oh, that's not true." And you say, "Well, how could a perfect creator create an imperfect creature?" And why would you, if you were a God, create yourself so you only live one time and then you burn in hell because you didn't know all the rules? That's just the stupidest thing in the world.
So you would think, Richard, that the powers that be might know this, and
they do.
And what would be you go, okay, so here we are, and our ancestors, of course, we wouldn't be here without them, but possibly some of them made some mistakes, and here we are at the end game where they have maybe figured it out, and they've put the DNA back to the original way it's supposed to be, and they decided that the best way to save the earth would be to destroy it and then start back over. Do you think that's a possibility with everything that you see now, a possible complete scorching of the earth and then a repopulation like Noah's Ark?
Not a good one. If we have would an advanced species destroy our planet and start life over again for no reason? Then my gut reaction is no.
Well, no. Actually, let me just real quick stop you. No, for the reason that we had messed up the natural cycle of the earth by some of the decisions that we had made over the thousands of years, and that they have found a solution, and they've stored it underground, and they have it all ready, and the plants and the seeds and the food and the computers and the money and the gold and whatever needs to be to survive for 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, however long it takes after the earth would be somewhat scorched, for the most part controlled scorching, and then it regrows. Every time a forest is burnt, it regrows. It might take 100 years or whatever years, but it'll completely regrow. That's what I'm saying.
What I'm able to discern from my own awareness right now, from observing the planet, is that. And then I'll talk about that beyond the planet real quick. But on the planet, you got a small group of families that go back thousands of years. They don't want you to know who they are. They don't want you to know they exist. They control your major pillars, your religious pillars, the Vatican, the Middle East Cleric, your banks, including, Bank for International Settlements, the world central banks, the City of London Corporation, all the stock markets worldwide, your prison systems, military, industrial complexes. I already mentioned the banks and the pharmaceutical. So they control all these major pillars: education, publishers, media, and they're slowly culling the population now. It's been going on for many years, especially specifically since the 50s and 40s, once biochemistry came into the forefront. Before then, it was always through war. But we also realize that biowarfare has been going on for hundreds of years. We already know that the Native Americans were given smallpox-infected blankets. The Aborigines were done the same way. And we know that disease has been introduced into many civilizations from people that knew things ahead of time. And people were like, oh, there's no way they were doing biological warfare 200 years ago. Well, you better wake up. How do you think they killed all the Indians? And, so at that level, on the world level, there's a few families that are culling the population, and they've got everyone living in fear, fighting with one another. They're poisoning all the food while they're eating the best food. And they also got pure filtered drinking water coming into their homes. And if they don't, they have home purification systems, and they live in private enclaves. And they do have storage reserves so that when there's a cataclysmic event on the planet, they're protected. But now we go back, get past them. Are there a group of extraterrestrials helping this small group of families that are sticking it to the rest of the world? Well, if you believe there are a small group of superpower extraterrestrials helping that small group of families stick it to the rest of the world, that's almost like believing in Jesus. You're waiting for a savior to show up, or you believe there's some superpower you're never going to be able to overcome. And they want us to be in that state. It's one or the other. You're hoping for something in the future, or you're scared some superpower is going to destroy your ass if you speak up. But, have you ever seen the movie A Bug's Life, where you realize it's a few bugs trying to pull a mind job on the rest of the people?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's a cartoon movie about the ants and I forgot what the other flying insects were, but they were controlling the ants and making them work for them until the ants started waking up. It was one person that woke up, and you were talking earlier about this, the teeter-totter effect, or when enough people wake up, we reach this fulcrum. We already know that 10% is the magic number. When 1 in 10 people are awake, it's like being on a teeter-totter where it goes up and down. Well, 10% is all it takes to make that teeter-totter go up and down in the human kingdom, because 1 in 10 will enlighten those around them. Right now, it's like, 1 in 100 willing to speak up? Most people you try and talk to about all this stuff run the other way from you and think you're crazy.
Yeah, then the 1 in the 100 does it for a little while, and then it gets old, and they just kind of just live in their own little shell and keep it to themselves a lot of the time. So, no, we got a long way to go to get to the 10%, and that's why, books such as your, The Game of Life Now and this podcast and my website, that's why we're doing what we do, to help enlighten people and make it through these things, and I know I threw those theories at you, and I appreciate you answering them. I think, some people might have those sometimes. What's their plans? What do you believe their plans are? I gave you my theory there.
Well, right now it's a full court press with culling the population. It is full court press. Right now, when we do lab tests, the animals that were fed GMO products, conventional food products grown with herbicides, fungicides, and pesticides, and many other chemical additives that have been put in there as preservatives, food colorings, flavor enhancers, and on and on. The lab animals show genetic mutations after one cycle, one generation. Right now, in the human, in my family alone, we've had 2 cases of autism in this generation, and they keep telling us it's hereditary, but we've never had autism. And my cousin and my sister, they were taking the vaccines before they had their child. And then the child was forced to pump vaccines in them. And then they tell you, oh, it's all genetic. But you've got so many people waking up right now. So what's going on is we're coming to the singularity where you've got the ruling elite, and I know when you call them that, it gives them power, because they really ain't got no power. They're cowards. They're full court press because they don't want people to wake up. But the internet, like your website, many others, and information, knowledge is being put out there where people can wake up for themselves. And a lot of people are waking up and no longer believing what they've been told. And I think the moment you get past believing what you've been told, you can see everything. Until then, you're kind of brain dead because you're still believing everything you've been told. So where they're headed is culling the population. And, of course, everyone's got dreams about living forever and this and that and using technology to help prolong their lives. But that group is really kind of dead-ended, the controllers, because they can't go anywhere without the rest of us.
Yeah, it's an interesting quandary that we're in, and I know that we don't, we throw some doom out there and some gloom and conspiracy, but again, I believe we're born into a conspiracy, and at the same time, we have to find our happiness. I had mentioned earlier that I went to jail and prison before, and the only way to deal with
marijuana.
For marijuana, correct.
Which is, and we're gonna roll back every one of those charges. Once we clean up this crap, anyone that was ever arrested for marijuana will be just taken off their record. And I know they've harmed millions of people by giving them criminal records for something. George Washington, think about it. George Washington was a hero. He raped the slave girls. They killed the Indians. They grew hemp and marijuana and alcohol. And he's a hero. And now you're putting kids in jail for just smoking a joint and asking questions in a free and simple world. And you got people waking up, and what's happening is it's coming to a head. And it sounds like doom and gloom, but it's getting ready. It's going to be peaceful. Did you see what happened in Iceland over the past 5 years? They overthrew the government, threw out the bankers, started arresting a lot of the crooked politicians and the bankers. And remember, the politicians and the bankers, they both work for the same people. The bankers aren't controlling anything. They're being controlled behind the scenes, just like the Vatican and just like when you see North Korea, Kim Jong-il, or whoever this kid is that's killing everybody over there, that little boy, they'll kill him. He's a puppet, just like the Putin. Putin is a puppet. If he doesn't act right, they'll kill him. They're all puppets.
Yeah, it's hard to figure things out. It seems like that there is one king, possibly, that is a ruler of all the puppets, and it seems like that there's
shadow government.
Yeah, there's the shadow government, but also it seems like they're rattling their sabers for the last shebang. And I know
trying to, because they're getting ready to lose, and they know it. And there was a beautiful video that showed. I kept this video. It showed a group of lions attacking some beasts, some bulls, wildebeest or whatever they were, magnificent creature. And the lions grabbed one of them, was getting ready to kill it, and then all of a sudden the bulls turned on the lions and started attacking the lions. They'd never seen this, that these vegetarians attacked the bulls, the lions, and they ran the lions off, almost killed them. And at the same time, the alligators were attacking the bulls and the lions because they were fighting around the water basin when it took place. I don't know if you've ever seen that video.
Yeah, actually, I saw that last week where the bull was getting attacked, getting stalked for I think 45 minutes, and it actually had a lion or two on it and starting to chomp on it while it was alive, just laying there weak. And one of its bull friends came up and stuck its horn in the lion's side and threw it 6 feet in the air and twisted it around, and it was freaking out. And it was interesting that once they had fought back, they had the power, but the hard thing is getting people to fight back. And, that's a lot of the reason why I do this show. And I know people such as yourself write books and do things. You want to motivate people. Of course, you want to turn people on to the information that you have and your beautiful creation, but you also want to motivate people out there to do things. And, I appreciate the time, Richard, of, sharing tools that you have and, your background with the audience. What's next for Richard Spurgeon? You have the Game of Life now, and we'll go over the links on where to get that. But what do you have planned next?
Plan next. Well, you were just talking about the animal that defended themselves. Many of these websites keep us focused on gloom and doom and fighting, right? There's a difference between fighting and defending yourself. No animal has to let another animal take its life. And I know Ayn Rand said something in Atlas Shrugged, something to the effect that you don't have to give your life to someone else nor force another to give theirs to you. We have a right to stand up and defend ourselves and wake those up around us. And if you, let's say you're at a party and people are getting ready to run out and jump in the swimming pool, but you know that the water has got some contaminants in it, you have a right to tell everybody there's something in the water. You have a right to wake people up even though they don't want to wake up. And for me, the next step is, actually, I'll be honest with you, I'm openly challenging the government right now. And I've been going back and forth in correspondence. The government's already told me that my thoughts and questions are frivolous, which is the same thing you always told the slaves. Whenever a slave said this is not right, they said, oh, your comments are frivolous. They have no meaning. And anyone that asks these simple questions, they're always slapped down or told you're not allowed to talk about this stuff or we're going to put you in jail for talking about this, until the person's brave enough and intelligent enough to stand up and defend themselves. And that's where I'm at right now. I have another book coming out pretty soon. This book, the book that's out there now, The Game of Life Now, is a simple 100-page book that takes a person from start to finish. It's not a be-all and end-all book, but it helps you wake up. And basically, through asking yourself simple questions and kind of observing the world with a clear view, you'll come to that aha moment yourself. And once you do, that you're off on your own at that point, because no one can lie to you anymore, because you see right through the lies.
Yeah, no, you've actually you look on Amazon.com. I know that's where one of the places you could find your book. You have 5 ratings, 5 stars, and some great comments on there. So it definitely looks like you're getting some rave reviews just for the short amount of time that it's been on the shelves. And where's the best place to find it? Would you recommend that the listeners go to Amazon.com and look for The Game of Life Now?
Yes, Amazon, Borders Books, Barnes & Noble, or one of those closed, didn't they? But it's on a lot of the book websites, and you can download it as an ebook, or you can order a book and have it sent to your door. And there's a lot of good poetry in there, a lot of good spiritual quips and quotes to get you thinking for yourself, real easy. Because if you don't keep it easy, people won't get it.
Yeah, and I think that's where people get lost. They look at a book, hey, it has 300 pages or 400 pages on a certain subject, and it must be good, and they overlook some of those small books. And actually, some of my most favorite books on my bookshelves are those small, 80 to 120 page books that just make it simple and sweet. Manly P. Hall had done that, a lot of those books, and there's a lot of other teachers out there that do that. So I love these types of books, and I'm actually, I enjoyed our conversation, Richard, and again, I enjoyed the words you had said to me yesterday. Consider you a friend and a brother, and someone, of course, that's a guest on my show. But I believe that we're all connected as well. We need to stay connected, and when we find people that we sync with, we should keep in touch. And even though we got to live our own lives and play our own tune, we also need to lean on each other and help one another. And I know part of that is, I had mentioned to you when we had first started before the interview, hey, where's your website? And you're like, well, I registered it, but I got to get it built. And I was like, dude, you got to get this thing built, even though I didn't say dude, but that's what I'm saying in my head, because I know the power of the internet and having a website and what it does to help get your word out there. And I know you'll sell more books, and this message will get out there. So I'll probably help you with that. you want to give that link out where people could find it later, or do you want to wait on that?
Well, right now, if you just look on Amazon, The Game of Life Now,
Correct.
You're going to find me, The Game of Life Now, N-O-W.
Yeah,
You'll find me, and on any of the websites it'll pop up.
Okay, yeah, definitely look out there, audience, if you're interested in his book, of course. But here's my thing that I had mentioned earlier is that these podcasts are archived forever, and there might be someone later coming in. Are you going to have a website for this book, or are you going to register them?
We got a website set up. The website, the portal we're working on is called The Goal Now, G-O-L, The Goal Now, which is The Game of Life Now. But The Goal Now is a web portal we're putting together that allows people to come in and find data from a wide range of subjects, centralized, stratified, so that people can navigate through it and find what is interesting to them. It might be healthcare or food or education or science. So what we're doing is helping people narrow the information down, but yet anyone can come into that portal and find anything they want, even on extraterrestrial.
No, I love that name, Richard. And again, my reasoning to give the domain out, even though you're hesitant because it's not built, the website
thegoalnow.com.
Yeah, The Goal Now. So listeners, if you go there right now, it's not going to be active. There's probably not going to be anything there, but there's going to be people out there that hear this, a month down the road exactly, Richard. And I would love for people to find you out there when you are, and maybe people will bookmark this website and say, hey, I'm going to check Richard's work out when he gets his website up. So, and maybe after that happens, you get your next book on, we'll have you on the show again. So again,
or
Richard,
any other time. I'd love to talk with you. If you got more detailed things that you'd like to talk about, just straight up questions. I love it all.
Okay, great. And again, I enjoy the time. His book, The Game of Life Now, you can find on Amazon, and then his website that will be live in the near future is thegoalnow.com. I'm your host, Mo, from thegnosticwarrior.com. Richard, it's been a pleasure, brother, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Same to you, brother. I'll talk with you soon.